Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is me once again screaming into the void of the internet. You know, I'm off today. Body is sore, but I felt like I wanted to talk about something because I know my last video I talked about clown world a bit and stuff like that. But I don't want to say that this is a continuation, but I kind of was just thinking about something as I was overviewing several topics, that's kind of blowing up right now, right? And I guess I kind of want to talk about a semi continuation of Clown World, but more along the lines of the dynamics between people. I don't just mean from a relationship standpoint, but I do kind of want to talk about certain things that I'm seeing as of late. I know in Clown World, I've mentioned that I've been noticing that there is this lack of maintenance that I see going on in day to day life, you know. And I feel like people really misunderstand just how important maintenance is. And I don't mean maintenance in terms of vanity. Okay, I'm not talking about like all of that freaking makeup and all this stuff. And funnily enough, I do find it odd that people aren't maintaining themselves in terms of, like I said, like I'm seeing a lot of doll ladies, if you catch my drift, because I have to be careful what tuck to over here. Uh, and they are just hairy. They've got like stubble. They've got like chin hair, upper lip hair, and I'm just I know that they're taking pictures because they're wearing makeup, so I already know that they've got Gram, you know, Facebook, whatever freaking social media you can imagine, and they're just showering it with their pictures, and simps are flocking along like they're the most beautiful thing ever. But again, there is this almost normalization of lack of maintenance amongst the gals that I'm seeing. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, again, like I'm noticing that guys are pretty maintained. At least the ones that, seem to have, the screws in the right place. Like obviously you've got nut jobs running around everywhere because unfortunately everyone who is crazy is walking amongst us when there should be, especially these days, quite a few people in asylums. Like they really should have some kind of mental help. And unfortunately, considering that we are in the do as thou wilt age and oh, nothing's wrong, nothing's crazy, nothing's delusional, you can be 76 million different identities at once, unfortunately, we have so many people that are just walking amongst us who are crazy. But when I do run across the people who are like reasonably sane, even if they seem reasonably sane, if they're gals, they're like what I just described. They're just like they're not really maintained in some capacity. They'll put on the freaking fake up, but they won't like see those like hairy arse arms and the chin hair and stuff like that and upper lip hair, and they'll feel like that's fine. I guess it's weird to me. It's very weird. And then to look at the guys, and it's like guys' skin is like, and I'm not trying to sound like a fruit bowl. It's like they take better care of their skin, which isn't surprising considering that we don't freaking put makeup on and block our pores and stuff like that. It seems like they're more moisturized, and funnily enough, like I'm noticing guys like with like shaved arms and legs. I kid you not. Like, not that I have a problem with that. It's just, what the heck is going on? Like, why is there such a reversal of, what's going on here? Like, once upon a time, like, the gals would talk about maintenance and caring so much, and even to this day, they'll still spend, time in the bathroom, like taking their sweet time, but they get out and it's like all that's really changed is they put on the fake up and like all of the other stuff, like the grooming in terms of like the arm hair, the leg hair, the upper lip hair, the freaking chin hair at this point, like it's still there. And they're just like, well, I'm looking sexy, and I guess you are because funnily enough, someone was openly admitting to having like a one night stander, and this was actually the same chick that was talking about how she was more traditional. So I was like, interesting. Because you see, when you're quiet, people forget you're there, and they tend to open their mouths a lot. So you hear a lot more stuff than you would be led to believe people would be willing to say when you're quiet because they forget you're there. And I was like, how interesting. On one hand, you talk about being, more old style and you want people to pursue you, but I'm gonna just be real. If the guy looks good enough, those legs open like a book. Very interesting. But that was just one element of what I wanted to talk about because I kind of wanted to talk about how, in general, it seems like looking at that, right, seems to be an indication of people's mindset. You have to understand that, like I mentioned, don't underestimate like how important routine is, right? I know people see routine as like a bad thing, but certain routines obviously can be. But if you have some sort of healthy routine, it's like a nice indicator of your mind. Let's say, for example, me, and I'm not saying this is some guy that's got life figured out, far be it from me, okay? But for me, my routine is obviously like, getting up, and if I go to work, try and eat something healthy, get to work, make sure I don't overeat at work. And then when I get home, even after doing sometimes like a 10-hour shift, I'll come home and do like 100 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats, right? Because I don't really have the most equipment here. So I'm trying to make sure that I do some kind of form of calisthenics to stay healthy. And consistently doing that is doing pretty well for me. I am noticing a semi increase in muscle tone because I am taking some more like whey protein, and I'm eating a lot more liver. So I'm not saying that like I'm making massive gains. Obviously, I just started the diet and stuff like that, but it's doing it. But when someone doesn't care about, like, say, a healthy diet, it's very easy to see like how they become to, like, like the way that they are now, like whether it's like really obese or even if they're skinny and they just don't really have much strength or endurance. If you don't have a decent routine, it's an indicator of like how you're going to be, right? And so when I'm looking at people that have pretty much bad routines, you know, I'm noticing something that's an indicator of the culture. And it's mainly just the fact that, for the most part, most people have just given up even trying with general stuff. I know that I've mentioned a lot of guys checked out and stuff like that, but I'm noticing that in general, most people are not really trying. And the people that do look relatively okay are people that have some form of routine, be it exercise or like, just taking care of themselves or, just not overeating, just something. But with a lot of other people, you're seeing that where they just don't care. They just don't care how they look and they think that this is, acceptable. Like the obesity, for God's sakes, to what I'm looking at in the service industry that I work at, right? It's disturbing to see how many people come in there with kids and the kids are pudgy. That's child abuse. And no one can tell me like otherwise. It's freaking child abuse. And it's not surprising to understand the sentiment of why people have given up, but I don't really feel like if you're going to give up, you should be out here like with a whole ass family, like it doesn't really make sense because you're the last person, in my opinion, that has the ability to give up, considering that you're a parent. And you would think that you would want to stick around for as long as possible because you have kids. And unfortunately, these people are like massive. I'm talking, they look like they're at least close to 300 pounds sometimes, and they've got kids, and the kids are pudgy, and it's it's vile. And it's mainly, I feel like some of it, okay, isn't really just from the state of the economy. Because listen, you guys know I talk about that to death. But I also feel like it's a sentiment of entitlement. You know, this generation as a whole, there are some hard workers here. I'm not gonna say that there aren't. Okay, quite a few people in my job site, funnily enough, like I'm one of the older people there, right? I look young. I look younger than some of the people there, but I'm actually one of the older people there, right? And they are decent workers. But then you have some of them when they talk, and I do mainly work with women. you will hear the words, I deserve. And I don't really just feel like it's a sentiment with women. I feel like it's a sentiment with a lot of younger folks in general. I deserve. Because you looked at how things could have been if you were born at a different point. You know, if you could have afforded a house at, I don't know, like 100K and stuff like that. And a lot of it has formed a bit of a resentment to I deserve. And I've, talked about my sentiment on previous generations to an extent, but never do I ever talk about the fact that I deserve. I just talk about the fact that, time has passed. You can't really feel like things are going to be the same just because it was easier for you to like walk into somewhere and get a job does not mean that that's how it is for us. I wish it were. I truly do. I hated, looking for work for as long as I did, but hey, I got it now, and so I'm making the best of it. And I'm sorry if I yawn a bit because I am still exhausted, but the words I deserve, right? I deserve. There's a big problem with that, whether you're a man or a woman, if you think that you can go through life with the idea that you deserve. Because the simple answer, folks, is the world doesn't really feel like you deserve anything. As I speak, as you are listening, if you are listening to this, things are trying to kill you. Okay? There are tons of microorganisms that will love to hijack your body, mold, spores, all kinds of stuff, parasites, you name it, trying to kill you. When you think about I deserve, even though I feel like to an extent, yes, I kind of agree with that. Even though I feel like you should be the one to have to like build it, stuff like that. I do think that you deserve to be able to, have a home. That doesn't mean someone's going to give you a home per se, but you should be able to, build a home somewhere. Of course, the government isn't too happy with that. That's why they'll be like, well, no, we own the land, not you. We own the land, not you. I do feel like you deserve to be able to put some food in your belly. But if you go out and try and hunt or fish, well, where's that deer fishing license? We gotta protect the ecosystem. As they, riddle it full of garbage and human waste and all kinds of stuff. And I'm not saying this is some freaking tree hugger. I'm just being honest and calling out the hypocrisy, right? You should be able to feed yourself, but, they don't want you doing anything out the confines of their system. The truth of the matter is, human history, for the most part, doesn't really care if you feel like you deserve something. You only really got something by working. And there's a big difference between work for, corporations, that kind of work, and working for your life, okay? Working for your life is just a simple task is just making sure you're eating right so that you have good nutrition. Making sure you're keeping your health up by, some form of exercise so that you have, good health. Work in general, like for things that are going to benefit you. That's the kind of work that humans have had to do for millennia since we've been here. Even protecting yourself, Sometimes just having freaking spears and needing to go freaking fight bears and wolves off. This was very commonplace back in the day. That's why people wanted lots of farmhands, so just in case if something did happen, if there was an attack on the herds, you had extra people to go fight off, the predators. It has been a struggle to get here. It really has. And so this overlying sentiment of I deserve is really doing these people a lot more harm than good. Isn't it odd that in countries that are not full on third world, it's like they're third world with modern elements, that population is usually healthier, Even if they're eating like kind of like unhealthy foods, it's like, I kind of made this joke a bit considering the kind of restaurant I work in, which is an Asian restaurant. Uh, it's like they're always cooking with oil, but they still overall look healthier than us, And it's because I feel like there's a different mindset. Obviously, you're still going to have people who are unhealthy there, but there's a different mindset about approaching your body and, your day-to-day life than it is here. And over there in general, there is an overwhelming mindset of striving to work harder because from the moment that they're young, they're usually indoctrinated to, try and be the best that they possibly can be, even though, like I've mentioned before, like the paradox of success, not everyone can be the best. Like that's just impossible, which is, a big factor as to why those people tend to off themselves quite high, because they realize that they can't be the best and they've been brainwashed so long that they should be the best, that if they can't be the best, then, well, they don't feel like they should be here. But at least in terms of like their physical health, they've got us beat very, 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 very soundly, you know? And I feel like that's because, again, they've got decent routines going. And even though they like eat like that, you know, looking out for yourself and understanding the idea that you have to work towards things, it it has a good impact on your sense of reality. Because we live in a culture that is trying so very hard to tell us that if you're just unhappy with your reality, just pretend like it's different. You know? I understand that it's not like you can take the reins for everything in life. You can't. But there are things that you can take the reins on. But this culture teaches you that if you are just unhappy with something, just pretend like it's not there. You know? If you're sick of being treated unfairly, just try and become a protected group. You know? Start shaming people and destroying their lives because they don't support your group or your thinking. But realistically speaking, no one owes you support, and you are not entitled to get it. And other cultures understand this. But this culture, despite all this technology and stuff, they're having a hard time. And like I said, it's an indicator to me. It's an indicator of the mentality of people when you can not only hear what they do, but you can look at the results of thinking like that, of living like that. And these people look like they have a problem and a half. And I don't mean that funnily. I'm not happy that these people are looking like this. Like it is a massive catastrophe that has befallen this generation when they are so out of touch and they're just begging everyone to like help their delusion because they cannot handle what's really going on out here. I don't know, man. It's it's something that I think about, even though it's not really like I am not, super affected by it. It's sad to see because these are the kinds of people that are sometimes popping out kids and they just don't know about anything, you know. And funnily enough, this isn't necessarily an update, but in correlation with this to prove my point, uh, my ex, for example, like I mentioned, the one that recently had like that mental breakdown, she just got diagnosed again because she had another episode, and she got diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And I don't even know if it's really just that she's full on like that, or if it's really just the fact that she can't handle the stress. Because she, even when we were together, was someone that had this idea that she was owed something. You know, she felt like I was supposed to spoil her, which really just meant, spend tons of freaking money, right? And now that she's going through what she's going through, you know, uh, and they're still in that really tough time, it's destroying her. It's destroying her to see that, hey, listen, despite the fact that you might feel like someone's supposed to spoil you or that you're owed something, life doesn't care. Life does not care at all. And that is destroying her mind. Because listen, a lot of people will crack under pressure. People like to think they're stronger than they are until life really starts kicking them in the arse. You know? I really wish that this generation can get a bit of structure in their lives because, my God, You got to get some structure in your life if you're going to survive these days. This is not a nice world. There's a lot of effed up stuff going on in it. And the only way that you're going to be able to endure it is if you have structure. And I'm not saying this with like a silver spoon in my mouth. I'm not saying this from, like high-end luxury living. I'm just saying this as like an everyday guy. I've been through quite a lot of stuff. It's not like I've been through everything. There are people that have been through stuff that's way worse than me and makes my crap look irrelevant. And it's not about trauma dumping. It's just about how were you able to get through bad days and bad times. That's gonna come. That's gonna come. How should I say this? That's gonna come in handy. Because in today's day and age, there seems to be a lot more bad days ahead of us than good days. And even though there will be good days, we're going to have to know how to tough out these bad days. And that's really just all that it is throughout human history, guys. We had to tough out some incredibly bad days. Days where it just felt like all you wanted to do was just die. Can you imagine looking at like plagues sweeping through communities and stuff like that, watching your friends and your families and loved ones just drop person after person, and you were still here? Can you imagine what it's like during famines? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all of us are here because people learn to get through some really rough days, and this generation is struggling to get through those really rough days. And I feel like it's because lack of routine and structure and this sense of entitlement that people have. And I don't mean that just for young people, okay? I mean that in general, I mean that in general. So please don't interpret this as like kind of a boomer praising video where you dang whippersnappers, you're just back in my day, like, I'm not saying that. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get off my chest today. I am exhausted if you can't tell. The wage cage is kicking my arse right now, but we gotta do what we gotta do and sacrifice so that we don't have to sacrifice as much later, Other than that, things are going pretty well here. We're fed, we're clothed, all that good stuff. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go take a soak in the tub after this, just to kind of like let the muscles like relax a bit, because it's not even about bathing at this point. It's really just kind of like soaking the muscles kind of seems to ease them and helps them to relax a bit. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I want to thank you guys for watching, as per usual. If you have any tips for how you are coping with things, feel free to leave them. Because the way that I do it, and I've mentioned this before, is my life was so full of negative stuff that I just see negativity, and I use negativity as a foundation point to like build on and convert it into something positive. Might not have this, but at least I have this, So that's how I see it. Want to thank you again. Thank you for always kind of being here. Even if it's not that many people, I do appreciate you. And I hope you guys are hanging in there too. Because as I do say sometimes, guys, there is life beyond your pain. I can't necessarily tell you when it's going to get better, but checking out early just pretty much guarantees that it never gets better. So thanks once again. God bless. I will see you next time.